Knockdown, rebuild. Knockdown, rebuild. As seems the actions that delineate Japan's post-war values of domesticity. A domestic culture predicated upon the detachment from physical permanence, where a fetishization of newness and aesthetic are at the crux of its design. Japan has built an image rendering its culture resistant to much of westernization, or so it seems. How much of their way of life is really inherent to Japan's long-standing tradition? To understand this relationship best, we must look at Japan's domesticity through the lenses of tradition, modernity, and perhaps most importantly, westernization. Sui Fujimoto's House in A seems to be the most recent example of this dynamic cultural relationship. Fujimoto utilizes glass and a thin, lightweight structure to broadcast an image of the rituals of Japanese domesticity to the wider urban landscape. Its 21 adaptable floor plates articulate as a triumph of not only flexible living, but also Japan's long-standing tradition of open-plan design. So where does westernization begin to entwine itself within this culture? To understand this, we must look at the effects of westernization prior to the war. The Meiji period defined itself through the Treaty of Amity and Commerce between Japan and America. What followed was a rapid modernization of Japanese living. The long-standing traditional values of an eternal Japan was thus questioned, with the architectural impact of this manifesting in a culmination of borrowed European styles. Japan, for the first time in its history, saw the West as being the superior culture. Japan's early influence from the West is thus profound, as its identity began to transition towards modernity, where values of practicality were favoured over aesthetic. That is, until the humiliation of the war. What followed was not the rejection of westernization, but instead, a careful marriage between Western domesticity with traditional Japanese design. Kenzo Tange's house was perhaps the first example of this. Appalled with the influx of Western design littering Tokyo, Tange adopted the simplicity founded through modernity, while utilising Japan's open-plan ideals, as his design translated into an act of resistance to Tokyo's westernization. As the era passed, the nature of this marriage also began to shift. Kiyonori Kikutake's Sky House harnessed the technological advancements from the West. The kitchen and the bathroom thus became programs that could be physically moved depending on the needs of the residents. Tange's house opted for resistance. Kikutake's Sky House opted to harness Western technology. Then there was Shinohara's White House, which reintroduced traditional Japanese values of beauty over functionality. This brings us back to Fujimoto's House in A, which further shifts Japan's domestic cultural identity towards tradition. Fujimoto takes the next step while developing on his predecessors. He resists through the use of flexible floor plates, harnesses modern technology through the thin, lightweight structure, incorporates aesthetic and beauty through the exaggeration of white, and adds his own little part in the Japanese domestic narrative. He broadcasts House in A as a flagship of domestic living through its transparency, a statement of intent, a proclamation that Japanese culture finally supersedes its Western counterpart. Considering how Japan's domestic landscape has shifted to favour its traditional ideals, it is perhaps a testament to Japan's inherent stubbornness to fully adopt and submit to globalisation. This in actuality is the most integral facet of the Japanese identity over the past 1,000 years, and there is very little evidence of it changing anytime soon.